information in this podcast is of general nature only. It does not take into account your personal needs or objectives. Before investing in any product, you need to consider your personal situation, needs and objectives. Always seek professional advice for your particular circumstances and needs prior to investing.
Okay, hi Georgie.
Hi Dave.
So today we've got Georgie from Disability Housing Solutions joining the chat. And so Georgie, I don't want to steal your thunder. Why don't you tell us about yourself, your background and what you do at DHS?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. So a little bit about myself. I've been in the industry for coming up to 10 years. Did a bit of study when I first started, landed myself into more of a transitional housing, higher behavioural programs. I guess that model now kind of looks similar to that SIL model. So it was really hands-on with the participants or tenants themselves. And then I've kind of just seen my professional progression throughout the years lead me into working directly for the NDIS, gaining a bunch of knowledge and experience within that. Then I got into the construction industry, led a division, Queensland-wide, Northern Territory and Northern New South Wales, for home modifications within not only NDIS, but my aged care work cover schemes as well. And then I've now found myself here working within the SDA market. So, liaising mostly with the owners and developers, at all different stages of their journey. I guess we see most towards the end. As the SDA provider, we tend to get engaged towards the end of a build, or, if they've got a property already built and they're needing to enroll it. However, we are trying to, I guess, break that up a bit and try and be one of the first point of contact so we can educate, people wanting to invest in.
And we're gonna get into that today. That's part of today's chat, is to talk a little bit about that. I mean, so SIL before it was SIL, you're hands-on, you work within the dark arts of NDIS, construction, Queensland, Northern Territory, home office. There's a fairly diverse background. So there's a broad place you're coming from, which is cool. Any favourite experiences in the last 10 years that stand out?
Look, honestly, I loved working with the people, hands-on. I definitely, I think that was so beneficial to my knowledge and understanding of, not a lived experience. I've never had that myself, but just being able to identify what goes on in these homes, especially SDA homes, people that have SDA funding require a substantial amount of support most of the time. And so being able to identify what that could look like working in those homes. And then I would definitely say where my mind sits are more business processes and I guess that more computer-based, and communication and liaising with reputable service providers, occupational therapists.
Really good, man, because I've been thinking about it quite a bit. Susanna and I, who also works for DHS, we're down in Melbourne next week for NDIS DA conference, and they've got us speaking on stage, right? And I've been thinking a little bit about people that don't have the lived experience of living with a disability, people that do, coming together. Because like you, I don't have that lived experience. I've got an auntie who has an intellectual impairment, but that's really as close as I've gotten as a lived experience. I'm very aware, though, that can happen to anybody. You can walk down the street this afternoon and then next week you're engaging with NDIS because you have a permanent disability, right? But, and as I sort of thought about it, and something I've noticed within the industry a little bit is that there's a push for people with lived experience to really be at the front and centre, which is appropriate.
Yes.
And it's also really appropriate to engage people with the relevant skills who want to be involved in like a social impact business, to bring the perspective that you might get as a person with a lived disability. Like someone who has grown up with a lived disability may not have the background and experience that you and I have, but we can come in and support that person, and they can bring that perspective. We can all come together for a better outcome. So I'm really liking sort of grappling with that question, I guess, about the contribution able-bodied people could make who don't have that experience, that can still look out in the world and see this as the thing that he's dealing with, and bring different skill sets to take it from that old sort of thing of let's be just really kind and nice and do our best to support each other, to let's get this really professional, really sharp, have a really great service. That's a business. This is care and welfare. That's a business. They both need to exist, but you can't have one without the other. If you just have care and welfare, there's no business, and it doesn't live long. As a business, you can't just be completely business without the care and welfare. So I'm really enjoying bringing these two parts together to see what we can make with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's it. I think, being in the industry for, up to 10 years now, I am driven by passion. Absolutely. I think, from, I guess, my involvement, especially hands-on, the disability support worker rate is pretty significantly generous, and you do see in a lot of services, a lot of changeover in staff, rollover. And I think that people that are driven by passion, they stay in the industry and they look for ways to improve. And then they eventually, align themselves with ethically and moral, other like-minded businesses and people to create that business partnership and facilitated, that growth within the industry, and whether that be educating gaps in the industry. There's plenty of gaps in the NDIS funded scheme. There's gaps in SDA, we can all see it. And so by aligning yourself with like-minded businesses and, people with lived experiences, it's all a collaboration. Yeah.
Now, it might sound like a weird segue, but this does kind of relate to what we're into today. Every week, Disability Housing Solutions, all the staff come together, and there's 18 or 20 people on the call generally, and one of the things that came up this week was, we've engaged recently with an independent consultant who's out there, again, with all of the best intentions in the whole world, and maybe making some promises that not only could he not fulfill on, that no one can fulfill on, because it's outside of the realms of what we can accomplish within the NDI.
It's a complex industry. There are steps there.
And it's sort of, and that's what got you and I chatting about. Let's have this chat today to talk about, okay, and I'm speaking next week with Shona about this, because Shona's one of our staff, and she has been through this experience. She's got children with lived disability, and she built her own SDA home, and and before she did that, she worked within the NDIS, and she knows all the jargon, but getting into the SDA world was a complete mystery, right? There's staff that work within SDA, within NDIS, that don't understand their own policies. It's tricky. And then when you get an independent consultant who's not a registered provider, with all of the best intentions, making promises no one can fulfill on, what that does, and I know you know this, Georgie, I'm sort of explaining for the audience, right? It creates expectations with people that you then have to deal with and wind back, that always ends in an upset.
Yeah.
So, look, the definition of an upset is an unmet expectation. So as soon as you have an expectation you've got no chance of meeting, boom, upset. And then that's what you're interacting with.
Yeah, and I feel like that tends to be majority of my role as well, no matter, regardless of the time frame of when we're engaged, whether it's after practical completion of a build or while build's taking place, or, property's been sitting vacant. It's an education of going, it is a complex market. I like to say there's the 3 different stages of, whether it be for the owner, but as well as the participant as well. But you go for the owner themselves, the first stage is finding land, the location factor, starting the build, the certification, all of that. That is a journey in itself, and that's got its own range of complexities, let alone engaging an SDA provider who is knowledgeable and they've got that continuity of care within the industry, and the team that can back that up as well. So, they don't just want to have your house as an empty house on their books. They want to be able to fill it for you, and they know the region and the demand and the likelihood, and they paint that realistic picture for you. So that's obviously what we do here at Disability Housing Solutions.
Yeah.
In itself is stage 2. And then you've got the 3rd stage, which I personally probably think is probably the hardest, which is finding a tenant or 2. More often than not, some owners are painted with that expectation that their property would be filled straight away. It's practical completion, let's enroll it.
Okay, so before, I want to get into this, right? This is great. So I want to, and I don't want to lose people who might not understand construction as well as you, right? Because you're dropping your little jargon bombs because you know exactly what you're talking about, and it's fantastic. And I'm with you. I want to sort of go back, right? So you're Mr. and Mrs. Jones, and you're like, okay, hey, we've come across this property, however it is, our financial advisor, our neighbor, our parents, I saw it on Facebook, however it is, you've come across a property, and you look, that makes a lot of sense. I get it. That financially, that's a really good decision.
It looks good on paper.
Looks good on paper. At what point should Mr. and Mrs. Jones look for a disability housing solutions or an SDA provider? So SDA, Specialist Disability Accommodation Provider, under the rules of the NDIS, if you own an SDA property, it must, not nice to, must be managed by an SDA provider. You can't do it yourself. You can't give it to Ray White. You've got to give it to someone like Disability Housing Solutions. So, and SDA providers, generally, there's some bad ones and there's some good ones, but generally, they're going to have a lot of good ideas about where these properties should go. So, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, we're looking at a set of plans, and we're like, okay, I like it. When should they engage with someone like us?
Yeah, I would say before they start building, or before they buy that block, just to confirm demand for the region. You know, it does look good on paper, and this is I guess a comment that I say quite regularly at the moment is the figures look great, the numbers are there, but you're working with people, not with numbers. At the end of the day. And people that are moving into these homes, people with disability, come with a range of life circumstances, and not one person is the same. You know, people with disability want what everyone else wants. They want to, you know, they want to live in desirable regions. They want to live close to infrastructure. And that's where we are currently, I guess, you know, moving off topic slightly, but that's where we are seeing these gaps in the industry is going. We're seeing a lot of overstock in or oversupply of SDA properties in undesirable regions. And it's not to say that there was never a demand there, but I guess, you know, it was a good selling point for investors to build there. But it's now...
Even if it's not undesirable, they're just oversupplied. You take somewhere like Harvey Bay. Harvey Bay's a great town. It's a great town, nice spot, gateway to Fraser, fantastic, lovely part of the world. It's just there was some reasonable conditions there for SDA property, and it was just avalanched and way oversupplied. So now you got a whole bunch of vacant properties up there that realistically is going to be very challenging to fill in the short term. Longer term, maybe. Short term, not so much, right? So and then there are some areas that shouldn't be building these homes because the data doesn't support it. So okay, so out of that, so you want to talk to an SDA provider before you buy the block to build the house on. Which I'm going to translate that in to say before you sign a contract, talk to. So you've been presented. Here's your set of plans, your building plan, your contract, whatever. So you go, great, thank you. I'm going to do some inquiry for a few days and speak to us or someone like us, and go, hey, I'm about to buy a property in Frankston, Victoria, or Mount Low in Townsville. What do you think? Right? Okay, let's have that chat.
Yeah, that's it. And at the end of the day, we're not gonna sell you a dream. You know, we don't profit until we've got tenants in your home. So we're at the very end of that service.
It's such a good point. Yeah, it's so good.
We want your property on our books so that we can tenant your home. We're not going to give you that false information on these numbers for this region. You know, this is your return, because we don't profit off that. We profit on SDA tenants in SDA. That's our business model. We're that level of care. We're at the tail end of, I guess, being engaged at the moment for a lot of people. Whereas I think for us, you know, we really should be ideally at the, when you're doing your research on what is SDA, you know, we can have that meeting on a full insight of what SDA is, you know, how it's come about, what the difference is, the complexities compared to the residential market, the regular residential market, you know, that education on the industry. Because I know, you know, we've got the resources online, you know, there's hundreds of pages provided by the NDIS. And, you know, if you, even for people that are involved in the industry, the words all merge. It's a lot to read. It's a lot to take in for anyone. You know, sometimes having that real conversation with a real person who's in the industry, they're not profiting off you yet. You know what I mean? It's a no obligation. Provide the, you know, information of the industry before you make such a large investment.
We do work with a couple of builders. So it's a couple of things you said, they're really good. We're not making money until there's tenants in the property. Just like if you buy an apartment off a plan in Sydney and you spend $1 million on an apartment, Ray White doesn't make money until they tenant it and they're charging their 8 or 9% property management fee, right? Until then, no one's making money. So they're interested in tenanting that property for you as quickly as possible. Same as us, right? So when you build the property, we're not making money when you build the property. We don't know who your builder is. We know nothing about it. Normally people come to us at the very end, like you said, which is not the best time to come, but that's normally when they come, which we're trying to get in front of that. So our incentive is to find the best possible tenants we can as quickly as we can to fill your property, because that's when we make commissions on the property management of that home, right? So if you're an investor watching this, we're not making money from your builder. The builder doesn't pay us a dime, not a cent, nothing, right? So our only motivation is to find the best possible participant tenant for your home as quickly as we can. Now, if you've gone and built that in an area that's just really undesirable, we didn't do that. We didn't do that. And we've got some really clever strategies. In previous videos, we've talked about the rental step-down model. We're working with different SIL providers. We're trying very, very, very hard.
I think I'll just highlight, you know, disability housing solutions. We've had
very good.
Really highlighted all that in certain regions.
Yeah. We're trying very, very hard to find the solution, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't create the situation you might be in. Okay. So everyone's got to, and we'll work together on that one. So yeah, a lot of this is sort of, and again, it all came about from this chat this week. We had a chat this week about this independent, not registered provider trying to match people on property, which is an important job. So it's great, right? And he's done some good work and filled quite a tricky property. He's did really, really well. But then presented a lease to the owner, that the new owner that hasn't even settled the property yet, that they've got no authorization to sign on a timeline that's literally impossible. It's going to be more like a 12-week timeline at light speed, and he's trying to get people in there in 3 days. People could walk to the front door and put their stuff in the house, but it's too risky. There's no certainty. It's not legal, right? So we're trying to encourage you as the investor to engage with us pre-signing contracts, or work with a builder who might have a demand assessment from an SDA provider, right? So you've got an SDA provider with their logo on it and their contact details, so you can verify it. Hey, this area, we think if you build something like that, you've got a pretty good chance of finding some great tenants, right? And that's as close as guarantees you're going to get. Don't ask for a rental guarantee; it doesn't exist, not in this industry.
Right? No one has
if you want a rental guarantee, go and buy an apartment in Sydney. You don't get rental guarantees for SDA properties. So you want a demand assessment with someone's name on it that you can pick up the phone and talk to if you choose to, from the builder, or you want to pick up the phone and talk to someone, and then have this chat about getting some comfort before you spend $1 million or $1.4 million on a property that might not fill. But to me, that sounds like just smart.
Yeah. Well, it's safeguarding. Safeguarding comes in all different ways, shapes, and forms. You know, you're safeguarding yourself, us as a provider in that circumstance that you've just mentioned. You know, this owner is wanting to come onto our books, and it's our responsibility to safeguard that owner of going, we're not going to do anything negligent, where we follow the rules, we're a reputable SDA provider. You know, and she knew that coming on board, and she knew that we are going to safeguard her as an owner. And having that, you know, more than happy to have educational conversations and going, well, you're not an NDIS provider or SDA provider, so this is actually the process moving forward. to reduce, the possibility of the same thing happening again, either to another provider or to another owner or to another tenant, yeah, there's a lot of safeguarding involved. Yeah.
But it's also required as a registered provider. And this is the thing. So again, if you're an investor watching this, there may, and this is what our colleague Shona, sort of one of the things she worked out, there may be times through the process where you go, why are you doing that? Why can't we X, Y, Z?
Yeah.
And look, and we're a commercial outfit. We want to do this as quickly as possible for everybody. But there's times when we're restricted by the system, and we can't do X, Y, Z within a week or 2 weeks or 4 weeks. It might take 8 weeks or 12 weeks, just because it's got to go through this black hole of bureaucracy and NDIS headquarters. So
Very well to NDIS.
yeah, as I said before, you've worked on the inside in the dark arts of the NDIS. Yeah. Does that? I'm just looking at my notes before we started. So we wanted to talk about safeguarding owners, and everything we're discussing. It's designed to make sure, as an owner, the last thing you want is to say, okay, yep, Tommy over here can move in before Tommy has his plan approved, his SDA approved, the property matched correctly, the lease signed, the head lease. You want all of these documents signed before Tommy moves in, because, and I'm sure you would have seen this, Georgie, and just kick me in the butt if I'm making stuff up. Okay. But if Tommy moves in and there's an issue with one of those many pieces of paperwork, everything stops.
Yeah, there's so many complexities and moving parts and that's why I said, there's 3 stages of an SDA, I believe. I do believe, that last stage of getting that SDA tenant into an SDA home and it's streamlining, that's why you are engaged with professionals in the industry, because we're relying on government portals, government processes, safeguarding of everyone, all parties involved, including us as a provider. It is such a complex system. It's not as simple as the residential market, where, you may have 4 or 5 applications, expression of interest, and you can pick and choose as an owner who's going to move in, and they're in the following week because the stars aligned, and that's all good. It doesn't work like that. And so it's that education that there's timeframes and, things out of our control. And if one thing's wrong, it can put a pause on everything, whether it's from the owner's stance, the government stance, their process is taking a time, or even the tenants themselves. So
yeah. And that might not be retrospective. So just because Tommy's moved in on the 1st of October, if all the ducks are not in a row and lined up and approved until the 1st of January, you get rent from the 1st of January, not the 1st of October.
Yeah.
So, and this is why we sort of say, listen, we want to do it correctly. We're also protecting the tenant in this situation to make sure they don't have to get pushed out somewhere else and move because they didn't get everything right. So when you go through this process, starting with an SDA provider at the very beginning of the process is so important, because even if it is a great house in a great spot and a great plan and a great design and you got great everything, you still want to give that provider as much time as possible. Then you've got, the 8 months of the build to work with support coordinators and SILs and hospitals and community groups.
Well, just to back that up, the nation's average, medium at the point, and that's taking into consideration all providers, SDA providers across the nation, all regions, including metro and regional. The nation average to fill an SDA property is 6 to 12 months. Right. So whether or not owners know that when they start looking at investing and developing, are they prepared financially to have their property sitting vacant for that 6 to 12 month window? And that's, that's taking into consideration the timeframes of, getting an SDA tenant in, let alone if they've built in an area where there's not much demand. There are so many moving parts into a successful tenancy agreement into an SDA home. Yeah.
I'm just curious, how many times a month would you get a phone call or an email from someone saying, I'm a practical completion in 6 weeks. Can I talk about some tenants, please?
Yeah, I would say if we move it to more of a weekly basis, I'm sitting at that maybe 6 to 12 mark at the moment.
6 to 12 a week.
Yeah. And that can be from referral, other, companies referring to us, builders going, we know these guys reputable, and we're transparent and we're honest. And sometimes they are very harsh conversations we have to have, because we want to be that transparent service. And we go, this is, if you are coming onto our books, this is the service that we can provide, and this is the realistic timeframes on everything. But yes, and then that alone to count in, our general intake and random phone calls that I get throughout the week as well. So again, involves a lot of talking.
if you've ever watched any of these podcast episodes, you know that I get particularly irritated about who I call grifters. And I still see the marketing out there, and I still see people promising that you can find and fill a multi-participant property in 6 to 12 weeks. I still see that marketing.
Yeah.
And it's one of two things. It's ignorance, which in this day and age, if you're in the industry, that's kind of unforgivable. You need to sort of get educated. So if you just don't know, if you're selling these properties, you should know, or they're lying. It's just a bold-faced lie. So they either haven't bothered to do the research, which doesn't bode well as a professional kind of outfit, or they're lying. Neither of those are too complimentary, I think.
Yeah.
Well, so we've safeguarded owners. We've looked at where the providers should be engaged with. We've discussed why it's important for tenants as well to have the correct processes followed. And we kind of all wrap it up. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Georgie, about any of this topic?
No, I think no. I think, for owners that have, found themselves in a situation, you don't know what you don't know. And we have seen that trend as an SDA provider, that there are these misleading companies out there that, that aren't well informed about the actual regional demand and other developments taking place, and, unfortunately do sell a dream. But yeah, it is. It's your next step moving forward, and always looking forward. You complete your build. How can we fill your home? And what company are you engaging moving forward? That's transparent, honest, and real about the industry. The passion's there. So yeah. And I would say that's Disability Housing Solutions to a T. You can feel it amongst every other staff member that's on the books. And they all come with a range of, lived experience themselves, industry experience, and we're all driven by passion. So,
well, Georgie, thank you. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for overcoming the nerves to jump on and have the chat. You've done great. So thanks very much, and we'll do it again sometime soon.